All right. Hello. Good evening. Welcome back to Classic Comics. This is going to be the first of a series of Star Trek related live streams. I'll hopefully be doing Tuesday regularly from now on. First of all, hail Lord Thoth. Thanks for coming by, sir. Always appreciate it when you stop by. And for those who are here or maybe lurking or watching for the first time, welcome to you as well. Also, if you would, while you're here, sub to the channel and like the stream as well. So I was going to start this off by talking about Prelude to Axanar, which is the, well, I guess we'd say somewhat notorious fan film created by Alec Peters, which chronicles the 4 Years' War, which takes place about 10 years before The Cage, the original Star Trek pilot. And obviously, it's been something of a troubled production. So, Prelude to Axanar itself was just kind of a setup for the main Axanar film. Prelude, of course, was done a few years back, several years back. The main Axanar film still hasn't been done yet. And part of it was because of copyright issues. There's been a lot of lawsuits around this thing between CBS, Paramount, and the producers of Axanar. And, I think I'm not going to get into who's right, who's wrong on it. I think from what a little I've seen, both sides have some fair arguments to make. But Prelude to Axanar, whether or not the main film gets done or not, is still a pretty great piece of Star Trek content. I think it's a really well done production. I think it's almost just about Hollywood quality in terms of the effects and in terms of the acting. They've got professional Hollywood level actors who are involved in this production. And let me bring this up here. And of course, this is Alec Peters, and he's one of the main drivers behind the production itself. And he plays Garth of Izar, of course, in this film, the character from the original series episode, Whom Gods Destroy. Now, in that original episode, it is made clear that he is a legendary Starfleet captain and someone who Kirk admires greatly. And they do mention his exploits at Axanar, but they don't really get into any depth on it. Now, this was expanded upon significantly during in the Star Trek role-playing game that was created by the RPG company FASA. Well, I didn't mean to. Let me bring this up. They created some gaming supplements for their Star Trek role-playing game. And one of them was this here, Return to Axanar. And there was a separate supplement called The 4 Years' War, which basically just kind of gave background. And they really did a lot of developing of the lore, really. I mean, back, and this would have been in the early 80s. And really, aside from the original series, there wasn't a lot of other Star Trek lore out there. There wasn't much of an expanded universe as such. But a lot of the ideas that were originally brought about or created in the role-playing game also eventually kind of made their way into standard Star Trek canon, I guess you'd say, alpha canon. And part of that is the origins of the different Klingons in the original series and in the movies. The explanation for why they look different. That the whole thing of genetic engineering that actually originates from the role-playing game. It was first put forth there, and similarly, the FASA Star Trek role-playing game is what originally put forth this notion that there was a war between the Federation and the Klingons about a decade before uh, the Cage, which was, of course, picked up on both in the Axanar fan film and also in Star Trek Discovery, because Discovery is set during that period. Let me bring that out. And again, as I said, they've got pretty much a Hollywood quality cast here. There's several established actors who have been in other Star Trek productions, such as J.G. Hertzler, who played General Martok, and I forget her name. The woman, I'll have to look at it as we go through the film, but the actress who played Colonel Ty's wife on Battlestar Galactica, and of course Richard Hatch, who played Apollo in the first Battlestar Galactica series, and also played the character of Tom Zarek in the reboot. And if you're at all a fan of Star Trek, especially of the original series and that whole era, I mean, I think this is really almost an indispensable piece of Star Trek content because it really embraces that period. The aesthetics, both in terms of the uniforms and the sets and the ships, rather than trying to basically reinvent them the way the modern Trek shows have, the modern Trek shows seem to have this aversion or distaste, really, for the original series, which is unfortunate because I think that Axanar, Prelude to Axanar, really shows that you can do that and make it work. And of course, it is the show, the Axanar film, the Prelude film starts out almost like a historical document with the United Federation of Planets archive sort of presenting this information to you, almost like it was something on the History Channel or something like that. And of course, we do have where was he? There we do have Gary Graham as Saval. Of course, Gary Graham sadly passed away recently. A real shame that happened. But he does play Saval here, and he does a pretty good job, I think. You were in on both Kickstarters, Lord Thoth? Yes, still waiting. Well, I'll get to that later. In fact, I'll just talk about it now. Why don't I bring that up? So I'll come back to this in a second, as long as you brought it up. Because they did have, I did check their website, and they do have an update here. If I can bring that up. Okay, so this is from their website, axanar.com. And this was posted on their website on November 16th, so just before last Thanksgiving. And it says, Axanar's final almost shoot was epic. Then it says, well, not quite our final shoot, as we had an actor who couldn't make it. So we have 1 day left to shoot, but we currently have 15 out of 17 actors in the can. Axanar will definitely release in 2024. So maybe that'll happen. I would say, and I understand particularly people who have backed it financially, why they're not happy with all the delays. I would be too. But I do think it's worth noting we did have, the whole pandemic and the shutdown thing, and more recently the strikes, and those have shut down or delayed other Hollywood productions. So I do think we can bear that in mind. Some things I think have not entirely been in their control. And of course, there have been the lawsuits, which I'm sure have slowed things down as well. But hopefully this will be coming to us in the coming year. And hopefully it will be worth the wait. But getting back to the cast, so yeah, we have Gary Graham, who of course was quite good in it, and a lot of other established Star Trek actors as well. J.G. Hertzler, as I said, who played General Martok, and of course Richard Hatch, who played Karn, the Klingon sort of commander who's behind the war on the Klingon side, at least. Although I have kind of conflicted feelings about the whole idea of this Klingon who fought a war against the Federation and then was defeated, and then years later he's willing to just kind of sit down and talk about it. Like I don't know. I see Klingons taking defeat more personally, and the dishonor associated with it, because this would be a shameful defeat for the Klingons, especially for their main commander. So for him to be willing to just kind of sit down and chat about it, I don't know. It doesn't feel very Klingon-like to me, but he's good in the role. And sadly, he also passed away. I think this was one of the last things that he did before we lost him. And then we've also got Tony Todd, if I can bring it up here. Well, I'm having trouble focusing on it. There he is. Tony Todd, who played Ramirez, who is like the commander of Starfleet, who gets the war turned around more or less and kind of rallies the Federation to fight this war. He, of course, also a Star Trek veteran. Most of these actors, of course, are veterans of Star Trek, not including Alec Peters himself. And where is it? And then the actress, I'm blanking on her name now, but of course she played Ty's wife. There she is, if I can bring that up. And she plays, of course, the Starfleet captain in this. And I assume that all the actors in this are also in the Axanar movie, or will be. It'll be interesting to see how things play out in that film, and if there will be anyone else in it that we haven't already seen. I assume there will be. And in addition to the acting, of course, as I said, the production values are pretty good. Definitely the effects are really, really impressive. Now, one of the things I really like about Axanar is some of the ships that they create. Of course, the main one being the USS Aries here. The Prelude is really almost kind of about the creation of the Aries and the Aries class, which, of course, kind of breaks from established Star Trek canon, because in this fan film, the Aries is the first purpose-built warship that the Federation creates, which, of course, contradicts established Star Trek canon, which has the Defiant class being the first one created in the 24th century as a result of the Borg attacks. And I've seen an interview with Alex Peters, and he has stated, Kate Vernon, is that it? Okay. Okay. She's Canadian? Okay. And I've seen her in other things too. The main thing I know her as is from Battlestar Galactica, but I've seen her pop up in other things. I can't recall what they are now. I think most of them they're not genre related stuff. They're more straightforward dramas. But I've seen Alex Peters in interview. I believe this was on Trek Yards, and I assume most who watch this, they're probably involved enough with Star Trek that they know about the Trek Yards YouTube channel. But if you don't, definitely check them out. They cover starships, various spaceships and various sci-fi properties with a focus on Star Trek. And they've talked about Axanar and the ships in it at length, and they've interviewed Alec Peters. Now, on that, he did talk about how I guess he played some of the FASA stuff in years past. I think particularly I think it's the Starfleet Command game, which is a Starfleet strategy game, with basically a war game where you play out battles between Federation starships and other, like Klingons or Romulans or what have you. And of course, they created a lot of fictional starship classes for the games, because again, and this would have been early 80s, there wasn't just a lot of additional canon out there about that. In fact, here's one image of something. I'll bring that up. Yeah, let me bring that up. And this is just some of them. And these are the miniatures from the game. And of course, they have the established ones, like there's the Enterprise, Excelsior, but they had Bird of Prey, and of course, Klingon like D7 and whatnot. But they had a lot of additional classes that they created expressly for the game to sort of fill out the ranks of Starfleet. Because back then, all you basically had was the Enterprise or Constitution class, and then I guess the Reliant, and that was about it. Maybe the Oberth. Like this one here, this is the Anton class. I'm a big fan of this one. I just really like it. Think it's a solid and really good looking ship. But I think the reason they probably didn't use the Anton class is because it actually looks very similar to the Aries. The Aries, I think the secondary hull is a bit more narrow, but has a bit more draft to it. And then it has the older style and the cells and struts. But other than that, it's a very similar ship. I'm sure that's why they didn't use it, because they felt it would be too confusing. But the Larson class is nice. Where's the Loch? Do they not? Yeah, there's the Lochnar class. Some of the others, like the Chanley, those are from the later motion picture era. And of course, they've created a lot of Klingon and Romulan ships to fill out the Klingon and Romulan fleets too. So I'm not sure exactly the reason they didn't use any of that stuff. Maybe it was probably a licensing thing. They probably didn't want to pay for the license. Yeah, you like the Chanley? Yeah, I think it looks good. The Chanley looks good from certain angles, but other angles not so much. Like it looks good, like if you're looking at it from like up and from the kind of up and from the side or something like that. I think it looks good, or maybe even looks straight down. But when you're looking at it straight on, I don't think it's. I think the struts are for themselves are just a little too long. I think they could be a little shorter. But yeah, it's nice. So what they wound up doing in the movie is they adopted some of the starships that were created for the JJ films. If you'll recall, particularly, there's that scene in the first JJ film where all the ships are leaving space dock or whatever it is, and you can see on the Enterprise's view screen these other starships, and some of them they have like double secondary hulls, and uh, like one of them has the nacelles underneath alongside the secondary hull and stuff like that. And they actually adopted those classes and basically redid them as in the TOS style. Lord Thoth, you ran a FASA campaign that lasted 15 years. Wow, really? That's cool. Man, that's wild. So in your campaign, was it a lot? Because I never ran one. I actually never played the games. I bought some of the gaming material, particularly some of the Starship stuff, because I found it interesting, but I never really got to play it because where I was living at the time, it was difficult to get my hands on RPG material, and I just couldn't get enough to really play it properly. Uh, so what was it? Was it a lot of like fighting, like war battles against the Klingons and the Romulans? Or was there other stuff? Like, was there any material for the Folians or the Gorn or anything like that? And but yeah, they adopted those starship classes from the JJ movie and did them over in TOS style, and they look really good for the most part. And I had a graphic on that. Tried the FASA TNG rules, but they weren't very good. Yeah, I never got into the TNG stuff as far as RPGs are concerned. Now, I had a nice graphic of the various classes. If I can find the thing. Give me a second here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, and so here are the classes they created. And they have one, and it's kind of an adaptation of the old Saladin class, which is just a saucer section with a single nacelle on it, represented by the USS Hermes here. And then the Geronimo, which is that's the one with the double secondary hulls. And in the interview on Trek Yards, I believe Alec Peters referred to that as a carrier, I think. Then you got the Magellan with two nacelles underneath the saucer, which is kind of a proto kind of Miranda class. And then this one, the USS Korolev, which has the single secondary hull, but then the two nacelles are slung underneath. And then, of course, the Aries, which is sort of the big hero ship of the film. And this is put next to the Constitution class to kind of give a comparison of size. And they created some Klingon vessels as well, to sort of because I believe at the beginning of film the D6 is the main Klingon ship, and then they bring the D7 online during the war. And Lothar says, I own most of the FASA TTRPG books. Just got one I was missing the other day for $12. Nice. Was that on eBay, or did you just stumble across it in a bookstore or something? You can sometimes come across a lot of that stuff. I don't know about a lot, but some of it in used bookstores. I'll come across interesting things from time to time. And I think I've got some images that give a better look at some of this stuff. Well, actually, before I do that, why don't I go ahead and talk about, it was on eBay? Okay. Now, and this is some information I found on, well, just online, but this was some nice imagery of some of these classes, like to give you a better look at some of them. Like, and there's the Magellan, which again, kind of, hold still, come back. Again, a pretty simple design, just the saucer section with the two nacelles underneath. Again, kind of an early iteration of the Miranda class that you would see later in TNG. And then also the Hermes, again with the single nacelle. And this is one they did kind of borrow from the FASA, which is the ship with the single nacelle and just a saucer section. Although they did alter it a little bit. I think the Saladin didn't have the kind of roll bar or kind of arch there. Very simple design. And I think they obviously kind of picked some of these to help show the evolution of the design of the starships. And then here we have the Geronimo with the two nacelles and then the two secondary hulls. And as I said, Alec Peters, he kind of in that interview kind of referred to this as a carrier. So I wonder, I guess maybe they've got fighters in these two secondary hulls, and maybe that's most of what it is. Like maybe not a lot of cargo space or something, because it doesn't seem like if these shuttle bays are kind of like the standard size they are on the Enterprise, they're not going to hold a lot. They're not going to hold a lot in terms of fighters or anything like that. And let's see. And there's another image. That's kind of a good image of the front. Let me bring that up. And there you kind of see the double nacelles with the strut in between. Again, I think this is a pretty solid design. I like it. And let me see if I can find one of the Korolev. Oh wait, here's a good one. Okay, here's a good view of the two secondary hulls there. Yeah, I don't know why, but I think it looks particularly good with that back view. I really do like that. And then, now I thought I had one of the Korolev. Okay, here we go. Let me bring that up. One more right quick. That's a good look at the Korolev, again with the single secondary hull, but you've got the two nacelles underslung there. And I think these ships do look quite good in the kind of original series aesthetic, original series style. That's one of the things about the Axanar Prelude to Axanar is it shows that that style can be viable and it can work, rather than just saying, oh, this is too old and too trite and it needs to be dispensed with. I do think it requires a little more in terms of maybe what you're willing to buy into, maybe a greater leap of imagination at this point, considering how technology has changed. But I think it shows that it can be perfectly workable in terms of providing an interesting visual for a film. Let me see if I can bring up some of the. Yeah, here we go. There you see. Okay, well, there's the Aries. And again, these are obviously pretty high level of effects. I mean, look at that. This looks great, doesn't it? Although I do think it's interesting. Again, there's kind of a JJ Trek influence there because where if they'll show it again there, these phasers that pop up like that. I believe that's actually a JJ Trek thing again that they have adopted. And I mean, I can live with it. It's fine. Generally, I'm not a huge fan of the JJ Trek stuff, but I think they adapt it well enough. Well, come on now. And there we see the Aries in action. And it's such a simple design. I'm surprised no one really came up with something like that before. Well, I guess they did with the Anton class. Again, that's pretty much what the Anton class is, just modified slightly. And of course, this thing sets up the idea that they're working on the Constitution class. Of course, they never refer to it that way, but we do see shots that show that that's something that is being built. And I think the idea is that the Aries is kind of a stopgap measure, that they're having trouble getting the Constitution class really up and running. And they have to create the Aries class kind of as a stopgap to give them something that can go out on the front lines and go toe to toe with the Klingons before they lose the war, because the Constitution class is taking a little bit too long for them to really get it up and running effectively. And let's see, is there another? I think there's another shot of it. There, again, you see it being built. And I'm assuming that if we get the Axanar film, part of that will probably be seeing the Constitution class. Oh, there we go. seeing the Constitution class coming online and sort of riding to the rescue and turning around the war sort of at the last minute, probably. It'll be interesting to see if we see, say, Robert April, perhaps, because of course he is the first commander of the Enterprise. And I think that Basketball Maven, hello, Basketball Maven. So Basketball Maven asks, what is Axanar? So Basketball Maven, Axanar is an alien world in the Federation that is the scene of a battle sometime in the past before the original Star Trek series took place. As far as how much of it is, as far as specifics, a lot of it is not official canon, but some sort of beta canon has it that a war between the Klingons and the Federation took place about a decade before the first Star Trek pilot was filmed, and the decisive battle of that war was fought in a star system called Axanar, or with a planet called Axanar in it. And there was a fan film done about that, which is what I'm talking about here. And there's another fan film, a feature-length film that is hopefully going to be coming out later this year. Thank you for stopping by, though, baseball maven or basketball maven. And I'm trying to think of what else. Now, as far as when the movie's going to come out, again, on the Axanar website, they say sometime in 2024. Again, we have heard that sort of thing before. It would be nice if that did happen. We'll have to see. I do think in any case, it'll be worth watching just for the battle footage alone, I think. And is Dark Vader going to be in it? No, sir. Nope, Dark Vader isn't going to be in it. And one of the things I think it really shows is how good ships can look in that original series aesthetic, you know. And of course, if you look online, there are a number of different ships that have been redone. Like I believe there's a Reliant style ship that's done in the TOS. See if I can bring that up. And there's one. Bring that up here. Let me bring this up. And that shows you what Miranda would look like in the TOS style. Again, it's kind of like how they've got the roll bar, but instead of the torpedo launcher, they've got the deflector, the main deflector set up there. Of course, one of the big questions people had when the first when Star Trek II came out is where's the Reliance deflector? And that's something that they play kind of fast and loose with. Sometimes the ships have deflectors and sometimes they don't. And I don't know, it makes you wonder how how necessary a deflector really is. I thought there was a better view of that though. Let me see. I thought there was a Miranda class that looked even better if I could find it. Where is that? Eh, maybe if I try Miranda. I'm looking under Reliant, maybe Miranda class work better. Yeah, here we go. That's a good one. Okay, let me get rid of that. I think that gives a much better look at it. And I guess because one of the ideas with the Miranda class, of course, is the roll bar, the sort of pod in the middle of the roll bar could be outfitted with different things. You could have a torpedo launcher, or you could maybe put in like a deflector dish, or maybe additional sensors or communications equipment or something like that, outfitted for different types of missions. And I suppose if you had that in the TOS style, you could do the same thing there. This one, of course, does not have a roll bar. This one does. Again, it shows how good that it could look if done in that style. It would have been nice to see some of those in the Axanar fan film, or Prelude to Axanar. I keep getting Prelude to Axanar and Axanar mixed up, but they're two separate films, actually. Okay, and in addition to the ship style, though, of course, the Axanar film also has the old style uniforms and the old style sets and stuff like that. Now, I do think that the sets, I think the most difficult thing is the sets because they could stand to be updated, I think. But the uniforms, I think they work well enough. I think they only need to be tweaked some, like the set that they created for Strange New Worlds, the Enterprise bridge set. I don't hate that. Um, in fact, actually, I don't mind the design of the Enterprise ship. I actually think it's okay. Better than certainly better than Discovery, which is I'm not a fan of that design at all. But I'm sure there are other folks who don't like it, and I certainly understand why. But I do think that the interior, like of the bridge set, could stand some updating. I don't think you want to go too far with it, where it's no longer where it becomes difficult to reconcile that with the original series. Like when they first uh, brought in, I think when they first introduced the Enterprise on the show, they had holograms rather than a view screen. And then, of course, later they conveniently said, "Oh, the hologram system's not working. We'll go back to a view screen." Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think you're fooling anybody, but okay, sure, that'll work. And another thing I do like about it is they use the old style sound effects, the old style phaser effects and the torpedo effects, which I really, really like. And um, I'd say another thing I also should point out is the editing. The editing in this film, I think, is really, really well done. They're very good at emphasizing some of the dramatic moments and the way they cut back and forth between the interviews and the battle footage. I think it works really well. I think it really helps sell the drama of it and emphasizes some of the battles. Again, it's just a really well done, top notch production all around. And I certainly hope that the hopefully forthcoming Axanar film will live up to this. Again, I mean, look how good this is. It's really great. In a way, it's just a really ideal molding, I think, of modern and classical. You've got the old style special effects, but then you've got modern visual effects. And like the way they go to warp, is very much in a modern way, modern style. Again, I think they kind of borrow from the JJ films in that sense. And as long as we're talking about, let's talk about the Klingons, the Klingon style ships, the D6 that they created for this film, I think looks very good, and it seems like a reasonable going from that to the D7. It makes sense visually. I think it's a good way to show an earlier version, and that kind of shows the evolution to the D7. I'm trying to remember now. There are, I think, some other in Prelude. We pretty much only get the D6 and the D7, but I do think in the Axanar film itself, we're supposed to get other classes. And let me bring that graphic up again. Yeah, so and here you see some other classes. There's the D6 and the D7, but then we also apparently they're going to show the D5, D4, the ship called the Raptor, and then of course an early version of the Bird of Prey. So it'll be cool seeing those, assuming we ever do see it. One thing I think would have been nice if they had shown, again, playing into the whole uh, original series aesthetic, is if we saw some of the Klingons wearing the old style uniforms. I think, like the kind of uniforms they wore on the original series. I think that would have been nice to see, and maybe they will in the main film, but in the Prelude, of course, we're just getting more of the sort of later sort of movie era and next generation era Klingon uniforms. And here's a good look at the Geronimo with the double hulls. Again, I just think that ship looks really great. And look at this. Here's, I think, a Korolev class, and that's one of the, Hermes or kind of Saladin style ships with the single nacelle. Those, honestly, those ships, the single saucer with the nacelle, those never look good to me. They just look too dinky and too kind of rickety. I've never been a fan of them myself. They just look, I don't know, they just look cheap. No matter how good the effects might be, they just look cheap to me. But here we're getting a good look at some of the classes. I think there's the Aries again. And they also have the old style star bases. Again, a nice kind of retro touch to it. So I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I think I've kind of said what I want to say about it. I do think, again, I am looking forward to it. Hopefully, they will fulfill the film, the promises they made, and put that film out sometime in the coming year. I do hope it'll be worth the wait. And I mean, again, if it's as good as Prelude to Axanar itself is, then I think it will be. I think it's going to hold up pretty well, and it's definitely one of uh, the Prelude I'm talking about now is definitely one of the better Star Trek fan films that is out there. Most of them don't have that level of production value in them, in terms of the sets and the effects and the cast and everything. In fact, one might argue it is the best. We'll see. There are some other good ones. There's another one out there, Pacific 201, which I think is also quite good. I may look at somewhere down the line. Now, hopefully, I'll be doing more of these Star Trek related streams on Tuesdays going forward. Next week, I think I'll probably just go ahead and review The Cage, give my thoughts on that. And going forward, in addition to looking at established Star Trek episodes, of course, like I say, I might occasionally look at the occasional fan film. Also, maybe look at some Star Trek novels and some of the other sort of, I guess, beta canon, you would call it. And I may do that after The Cage. Maybe I'll take a look at a Star Trek novel. And then after that, move on to the regular series. And before I wrap up, again, I want to thank the folks who stopped by. Lord Thoth, again, thank you, sir, for stopping by. Always good to see you. And again, those who maybe tune in on a rewatch, thank you for that. I hope you will give a sub and also like this stream as well. And I will go ahead and wrap it up there. And I hope you all have a good evening. Good night.